Each year, thousands of people disappear without a trace. Some cases attract mass media attention, while others fly under the radar. Publicity can make or break a case, and it's essential that all cases are equally represented in the media. Number 5. 31-year-old Sneha Ann Philip was an extremely intelligent and accomplished young woman. She was born in India before moving to New York as a child. Sneha obtained excellent grades, and when she finished high school, she accepted a job at Johns Hopkins University. After completing her undergraduate degree, she went on to study at the Chicago School of Medicine, and it was here that she met the love of her life, Ron Lieberman. As predicted, she excelled in medical school, and in 1998, the pair moved to New York. Sneha and Ron wed in 2000, and the two got residencies at different hospitals. Reports differ regarding where Sneha served her residency. By 2001, she was in the third year of her residency, and she was the shining star of the department. There was no doubt that she was going to make an excellent doctor. Unfortunately, her dreams would never come to fruition, as she disappeared in the midst of 9/11. CCTV footage captured the final moments of Sneha on September 10, 2001, at a Century 21 store in New York. That afternoon, she left her Battery Park apartment to shop as she had the day off. At 7:18 p.m., CCTV shows Sneha leaving the store, carrying bags full of shopping, but she wasn't alone. A sales assistant would later come forward and claim that Sneha was in the company of another woman, who she labeled as her friend. After leaving the store, she was never seen or heard from again. Ron waited for his wife to get home, knowing she wasn't at work that day. When he returned home late that evening, his wife was nowhere to be found. He tried to call her, but she didn't respond. Knowing she had the day off, Ron hoped she had gone to her brother's apartment to stay the night. When he awoke the following day, his heart sank. The apartment was still empty. Sneha was due for a shift at her hospital, but her scrubs remained untouched. In the early hours of September 11, 2001, Ron Lieberman contacted the New York Police Department to report his wife missing. At 8:45 a.m., the first plane flew into the World Trade Center, causing chaos across New York. Ron frantically called his wife, as did millions of other Americans nationwide. Call tones played repeatedly as loved ones desperately tried to get through. Lines became jammed and people searched the streets to find their beloved. The attack on the World Trade Center drew attention and resources from Sneha's disappearance, and her case flew under the radar. Ron told investigators he believed his wife may have been the victim of the attack, a theory Sneha's brother shares. Sneha was a kind and caring woman, and they thought it would have been in her nature to run into the towers to offer medical assistance. While there were some reports that Sneha was last seen running into the tower's rubble, these have since been debunked. Ron also theorized that Sneha might have been injured while walking home to her Battery Park apartment, which was 2 blocks from the World Trade Center. He believed Sneha had stayed the night with her brother or cousin, although this has never been confirmed. Another theory floating around is that Sneha left of her own accord to start a new life. According to reports, Sneha had been in court on September 10, 2001, after she was charged with filing a false report. The Charlie Project reports that Sneha had accused a colleague of touching her inappropriately. The police turned on Sneha and accused her of lying, and she was charged with filing a false complaint when she refused to recant her statement. Interestingly, her passport, credit cards, and personal items were left behind in the apartment, and the only thing missing was Ron's credit card, which she had used on September 10th. Despite there being no evidence to prove it, Ron believes his wife lost her life helping others during the 9/11 attacks. Ron's initial appeals to have her declared as a victim were denied, but in 2008, a new judge ruled that Sneha had likely passed away due to the 9/11 attacks. The judge, Justice David Sachs, addressed the court and said, quote, "Even without direct proof irrefutably establishing that her route that morning took her past the World Trade Center at the time of the attack, the evidence shows it to be highly probable that she passed away that morning and at that site, whereas only the rankest speculation leads to any other conclusion." Ron and Sneha's family are happy with this new ruling, which finally gives them some closure. Online sleuths and those who come across Sneha's case are not so sure though, and believe that she may have met with foul play before the plane struck the Twin Towers. One question that commonly pops up is how did the sales associate know that Sneha referred to the woman with her as her friend? Ron has never been able to identify the woman in the clip, nor have the New York Police Department. Sneha Ann Philip is described as an Asian female with black hair, brown eyes, 5'6" and 115 pounds. Her ears are pierced and she has a mole on her left cheek. Anyone with information is asked to contact the New York Police Department at 212-334-0635. Number 4. 18-year-old Steve Arrowwood Lewis Jr. had recently come of age in 1975, and like most young men his age, he was figuring out his place in the world. Fresh out of high school, Steve pondered what the future held for him and whether he would attend college. Steve was known as a bright and outgoing young man with a bright future ahead of him. Unfortunately, before his dreams could be realized, Steve would go missing in one of the most bizarre disappearances North Carolina has ever seen. March 9, 1975, marked a turning point for 18-year-old Steve Arrowwood. That day, he left his home in Gastonia, North Carolina without warning. When his parents returned home from work, they were stunned to find a note on the table from their son, explaining he had taken off and would call later. His parents quickly realized that he had withdrawn $815 from his savings account and had taken his 1971 Toyota. Fear and panic struck Steve's parents. He was usually well-behaved and thoughtful, and taking off without warning was not in his nature. His parents bided their time, hoping and praying their son was okay and would call soon as promised. Weeks later, on March 20th, 1975, the phone rang in the Arrowwood household, and it was Steve. According to his parents, he seemed happy, telling them he had found a job in Dallas, Texas, but there was a catch. Steve wasn't alone. He had met a 30-year-old woman who just happened to be married. Steve's parents warned him to stay away from the woman as nothing good would come from the affair. Steve had already come face to face with the consequences of his actions, though. The woman's husband was a long-distance truck driver who finally arrived home in late March following a long trip. The husband immediately discovered his wife's affair and turned his anger to her 18-year-old lover, Steve. As one would imagine, the husband threatened to harm Steve for his actions, causing Steve to flee the home. Running away did little to quell the husband's anger, as he followed Steve around Dallas. Eventually, by March 31st, tensions had cooled, and the husband and wife planned a trip to New Orleans. According to reports, the wife repeatedly begged her husband not to harm Steve, but no promises were made. Following the whirlwind romance and dangerous affair, Steve packed his things into his 1971 Toyota and returned to Gastonia, North Carolina, on March 31st, 1975. When he returned home, he recounted the details to his friends and family, and it was clear that the event had shaken him. Steve's happy and outgoing demeanor had been replaced with paranoia and fright. Wherever he went, he was constantly looking over his shoulder. His friends tried to reassure him, but Steve's paranoia was at an all-time high. For the first few days of April, Steve visited friends and family. On April 3rd, he visited his sister at the Fern Forest Apartments, where he continued to watch every car coming in and out of the car park. After having dinner, Steve hung out with a friend who noticed his bitterness. Every time a car passed, Steve examined it thoroughly. The evening would take a dark turn when Steve believed he saw his girlfriend's husband's car. He was convinced that the husband was following him and waited for the right moment to strike. The friend told investigators that while he didn't get a good look at the car or the driver, he did notice the car followed them wherever they went. The evening came to a close at around 10:30 p.m. when Steve's friend dropped him off at East 3rd Street, close to his home. By 12 p.m., Steve's parents became worried when he failed to return home. His father set out in his car looking for his son, and what he would find would unnerve him. Steve's sister resided at the Fern Forest Apartments, so his father was not immediately alarmed when he caught a glimpse of his car there. When he got closer, he realized the car was parked next to the swimming pool. The keys were still in the ignition, the doors were open, and most bizarrely, a pair of underwear lay on the ground. Investigators have never been able to determine who the underpants belonged to. Steve's father immediately contacted the Gastonia Police Department and reported his son missing. Initially, investigators wondered whether Steve had run away as he had before, but the discovery of his car changed their outlook. The Gastonia Police Department interviewed Steve's friends and family, and that's when they learned of Steve's affair. The husband immediately became suspect number 1, but tracking him down would prove to be very difficult. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that the Gastonia Police Department finally located the husband. Reports show he was highly uncooperative with investigators and refused to submit to a polygraph. The Gastonia police had no evidence against him and were forced to let him go. Steve's family believes he's involved in his disappearance and that someone out there knows something. On April 7, 1975, the Arrowhead family received a letter from Steve. This letter was postmarked to New Orleans, Louisiana, and unfortunately the contents have never been released. According to the Gastonia Police Department, the letter offers little in the way of his disappearance, but many are interested in its contents. Are the Gastonia Police Department withholding information to preserve the integrity of the case, or is this letter really invaluable? In the years since Steve's disappearance, his case has turned stone cold. It's unknown whether any forensic evidence was obtained from the scene or the car, and whether there are any plans to analyze it. Steve's parents passed away in 2008 and 2012, leaving behind Steve's 4 sisters. Steve, one of 5 children, will forever be remembered as a kind, soft-spoken young man. Steve's sisters are now continuing their fight for justice and answers. Steve Lewis Arrowwood Jr. is described as a white male with blonde or strawberry blonde hair, blue eyes, 5'8" to 5'9", and 145 to 150 pounds. He has a birthmark on his chin and a scar under his chin. He's also known to go by his middle name Lewis or Steven. Anyone with information is asked to contact Detective Albert Fleming of the Gastonia Police Department at 704-866-6702, quoting case number 1975-189695. Number 3. The disappearance of 27-year-old Richard Neal Forsyth is filled with twists, turns, and speculation. According to reports, Richard was last seen in Waterloo, Iowa on October 18, 1979. Richard was known to be involved in shady dealings with shady people, one of them being 22-year-old Stephen Kirchhoff. These 2 missing person cases are intertwined by possible witness sightings: a 1972 Cadillac and a rug. To this day, investigators have been unable to uncover evidence to bring either man home, and their families are left in limbo. 22-year-old Stephen Kirchhoff was known to deal illicit substances in Waterloo, Iowa. In early 1978, Stephen was getting ready to move into the home that he had just purchased with his girlfriend and the mother of their child, and the future looked bright. In late 1977, Stephen had just lost his job as a railroad worker, which forced him to turn to other activities to put food on the table. There were rumors around Waterloo that Stephen and Richard knew each other very well from their shady dealings, and some felt that things would end badly. On January 23, 1978, Stephen spent the evening with his girlfriend at an apartment on Maxwell Street, just a mile from his parents' home. A long night of partying and hanging out with his girlfriend caused Stephen to sleep most of the morning, waking around noon. Residents at the Maxwell Street apartments heard noises coming from Stephen's apartment sometime between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. According to witness statements, they heard a man shouting, "Don't do this to me," accompanied by loud bangs and thuds. Investigators have been unable to confirm whether this is directly linked to Stephen's disappearance. Steve's associates revealed that at the time of his disappearance, he was believed to have been carrying upwards of $8,000 in cash. Investigators wondered whether Stephen had been robbed or taken out by a rival player. That was until Stephen's car was found abandoned at Waterloo Industries, Inc., close to the Maxwell Street apartment. Days after Stephen's disappearance, investigators caught wind of bizarre rumors whipping through Waterloo. Witnesses claimed to have seen Richard Forsyth carrying something wrapped in a rug the day after Stephen disappeared. Witnesses also claimed that Richard's face was covered in scratches and abrasions, which resulted in multiple stitches. Richard gave varying accounts of what happened, telling people that he fell on a wine bottle, but few believed this tale. The rug in question was never found, but the Waterloo Police Department were eager to speak to Richard Forsyth. Unfortunately, they would be unable to question him as he skipped town just days after Stephen disappeared. Stephen bought a 1972 Cadillac in cash and left for Tucson, Arizona. investigators found Richard's behavior incredibly bizarre. The car had been sold for $2,000, with Richard paying in crisp $100 bills. Where had Richard obtained the money, and had it come from Steven? Days after investigators learned Richard had driven to Arizona, they followed in pursuit. Richard was one step ahead of them, and by the time they arrived, he was long gone. The Waterloo Police Department will continue tracking Richard over the coming months. In mid-1979, they received a tip from Grand Forks, North Dakota. Multiple business owners and witnesses reported bizarre behavior from a man who clearly wasn't local. A man calling himself David Gates put a Cadillac into storage sometime in 1978. Investigators analyzed the car and discovered it belonged to Richard Forsyth. They also received a tip from a motel owner who claimed that on the same day the car was placed into storage, a man now calling himself Richard Steves paid a month's rent up front. Bizarrely, the man was never seen again and did not stay for one night in his new room. The owner thought his behavior was odd but believed there was no cause to ring the police. That was until he heard about Stephen Kirchhoff and Richard Forsyth. The Waterloo Police Department provided photographs of Richard, but the motel staff could not positively identify him. After the car was taken out of storage and placed into the hands of the Waterloo Police Department, they made another startling discovery. Tiny red specks painted the seats and interior. At the time, DNA testing was unavailable, and investigators could not link the samples conclusively to Stephen Kirchhoff. Stephen's family believes Richard is responsible for his disappearance, but there's no solid evidence to prove this. Just as the investigation was heating up into Richard's involvement in Stephen's disappearance, Richard too would disappear. According to police records, he was last seen in Waterloo, Iowa on October 18, 1979. Few details are available surrounding his disappearance, and Richard's disappearance was more than a mere coincidence in the minds of the Waterloo Police Department. Stephen's parents have publicly stated that they believe Richard fled to Canada to avoid investigation. As reported by the Charlie Project, Grand Forks, North Dakota is around 80 miles from the Canadian border, and there's no evidence that proves Richard Forsyth fled to Canada. According to NamUs, Richard Forsyth was not officially reported missing until January 13, 1994. In 2003, Stephen's case was renewed when a new tip came into the Waterloo Police Department. The anonymous tipster led them to a 12-acre farmstead of Launceston Lonnie Loloff near Fairbank in Denver, Iowa. Lonnie was well known in Waterloo, and between 1994 and 2000, he served a lengthy sentence for various substances and weapon charges, but nothing of interest was found on the farm. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Waterloo Police Department at 319-291-2515, quoting case number W78850. Number 2. 7:27 p.m., February 9, 2004, the time that the lives of the Murray family would change forever, when a call was placed to the Haverhill Police. The call was to report an accident along Route 112 in Haverhill, a quiet, sleepy town in New Hampshire. The caller was concerned for the welfare of the driver, who had been acting bizarrely at the crash site. Officers arrived at the scene less than 15 minutes later, but the driver was gone. What would follow would become one of the most bizarre disappearances in American history. Butch Atwood, a local bus driver, was making his way home along Route 112 when he saw a 1996 Saturn at the side of the road close to a barn. The car had spun out of control, smashing into a tree, causing damage to the front of the car. Butch immediately hopped out of his car and headed to the young female driver. When he approached the woman, he noticed she was acting strangely. She begged him not to call the police and assured him that she had already called AAA to help her. Due to her bizarre behavior, Butch ignored her wishes and drove to his home to call the Haverhill Police. Little did Butch know that another resident along 112 had also called the police department to report the crash. Initial reports vary, and one witness claimed to have seen a man near or in the car, but this was later recanted. At 7:46 p.m., the Haverhill Police Department arrived at the scene, but the car was empty. Officers searched the vehicle and the surrounding barn, but there was no sign of the driver. Haverhill police scanned the car's license plates and found that it belonged to 21-year-old Maura Murray. When police failed to locate her, she was reported missing, and her parents were notified. Her family were in shock, They saw no reason for Maura to run away from a car crash. An examination of Maura's car found red, wine-like stains, an empty bottle of beer, and a box of wine. On the surface, the case seemed like an open and shut case, but the further the police delved, the more confusing it became. In February of 2004, 21-year-old Maura Murray was studying to become a nurse at the University of Massachusetts. Maura had previously studied chemical engineering at West Point in New York, an acclaimed military academy. During her early studies, Maura realized that Army life wasn't for her and changed to the University of Massachusetts. By all accounts, Maura was an ordinary student. She held a part-time job and consistently achieved good grades. Maura's sisters later said that she was an overachiever and put her heart and soul into everything she did. In the days before her disappearance, friends and family noted that Maura was behaving strangely. She would break down in tears and become unresponsive. She would stare into space and have no emotion or tone to her voice. Those around her tried to help, but Maura wouldn't open up to them. At around 3:45 p.m. on February 9, 2004, Maura emailed her professors, telling them that she would be gone for a week. She told them there was a family emergency and she needed to go home ASAP. The only thing is, there was no family emergency, as confirmed by her parents and sisters. After sending the emails, Maura made inquiries with a lodge in Bartlett, New Hampshire, and packed essentials in a bag. She then drove to an ATM where she was captured on CCTV withdrawing $280. CCTV footage also showed Maura stopping by a local liquor store, where she bought $40 of alcohol, including the Franzia box of wine that was later found in her car. Her last recorded movements before the crash came around 4:37 p.m., when she checked her voicemail. Earlier in the day, she sent an email to her boyfriend Billy, saying, "I got your messages, but honestly, I didn't feel like talking to much of anyone. I promised to call today, though." After 7:27 p.m., Maura vanished. Officers arrived at the scene less than 15 minutes later, but it was too late and she was gone. Inside of Maura's car, officers found directions to a lodge in Bartlett, New Hampshire, where Maura and her family had previously stayed. To this day, investigators are unsure why Maura was headed for Bartlett. Investigators also discovered that star student Maura was on probation at the time of her disappearance. Months before she disappeared, Maura was caught using a stolen credit card to buy food. The courts swayed in her favor, allowing Maura to get away with probation on the condition that she kept her nose clean. Those who had boarded with her at West Point also told of Maura's dark issues, including her battle with an eating disorder. The response to Maura's disappearance was gigantic. Officers from across New Hampshire were brought in to help in the search. The barn near the crash was thoroughly searched, but no evidence was found. Interestingly, when officers arrived at the scene, they found no footprints in the snow of the field behind the crash. One theory is that Maura ran off into the woods, disoriented or scared. But why were there no footprints? Maura's credit cards, phone, and bag were the only things missing from the car. There's been no activity on her cards or phone since she disappeared. Even now, almost 20 years later, Maura's case continues to be one of the most discussed and debated within the true crime community. Some believe Maura may have run off to start a new life, while others believe she may have met with foul play. A witness who was driving down Route 112 that evening drove past Maura's car and recalled seeing an SUV parked nose-to-nose with Maura's car. Numerous searches have been conducted in the Haverhill area, but no sign of Maura has ever been found. In 2012, her case took a terrifying twist when a video titled "Happy Anniversary" was uploaded to YouTube by a user named 112 Dirtbag. Maura's father, Fred, had previously made comments to the media in which he said his daughter had been taken by a local dirtbag. The video, which has since been taken down, shows a man maniacally laughing at the camera before winking. The 112 and dirtbag references were too much for investigators to ignore, as was the upload date of around February 9th, 2012. Internet sleuths immediately jumped on the case, and according to some, the man in the video is nothing more than a troll. The case would take another turn in September of 2021, when bone fragments were found 25 miles from where Maura was last seen. Maura's family were once again filled with hope that they could finally bring her home. It was later determined by radiocarbon dating that the bones belonged to someone from between 1774 and 1942, making them too old to be Maura's. There have been several people of interest in the case, but no solid evidence has ever been uncovered to bring about a conviction. There are dozens of podcasts and pages dedicated to Maura's disappearance, and each one comes with its own theory. Some believe, like her father Fred, that Maura was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and a local dirtbag came across her. Anyone with information is asked to contact the New Hampshire State Police at 603-223-3856, quoting case number 04410F, or your local FBI office. Number 1. 23-year-old Tara Breckenridge was a small-town girl with big aspirations. Tara spent her formative years in Del Rio, Texas, surrounded by her parents and 4 siblings. Like many in the area, the Breckenridge family were devout Christians, and the family attended church every Sunday. Her upbringing was strict but filled with love, and in 1987, Tara graduated high school. Tara was excited to get out into the world and kickstart her adult life. Unfortunately, just a few years after her graduation, Tara would disappear, leaving a hole in the family. Shortly after graduating, Tara told her parents she wanted to move 350 miles from Del Rio to Houston. Tara wanted to pursue her dream of becoming a photographer, and she knew she needed to leave her small town behind if she wanted to be successful. In late 1987, Tara packed her things and moved halfway across the state to Houston. At first, Tara was enamored by the bright lights and the hustle and bustle, but the realities of big city life quickly caught up with her. The path to becoming a professional photographer was anything but smooth sailing, and Tara had underestimated just how expensive it was to live in a major city. Her photography business was doing okay, but it wasn't enough to support her. Tara was desperate to stay in Houston and wait for her big break, so she found a job at the Men's Club, an adult bar in downtown Houston. When she broke the news to her family, they were shocked. One of Tara's friends told Unsolved Mysteries, quote, "Tara wasn't the type of person you would think would work in a place like that. It was more just for the money. She was going to school and stuff, so it made her the money that she was comfortable with, and she was happy with that." As part of her duties, Tara would wait tables and tended the bar as other girls danced and interacted with customers. In 1989, Tara met Wayne Hecker, and the two quickly became an item. The relationship got off to a rough start, and Wayne made it clear that he didn't want Tara to work at the men's club anymore. The two continued to see each other, and months later, they moved in together. Months quickly melted into years, and by 1992, the relationship had become even more strained. Tara told her parents during a visit to Del Rio in 1992 that she felt something wasn't right with her relationship. August 3rd, 1992 was a relatively slow night at the men's club, and the manager agreed to let 2 girls go home early. As the manager scanned the room, he was surprised to see that Tara had volunteered to leave early. Usually, Tara stayed till right after closing time to get as many tips as she could. Something was off with Tara that evening, but nobody could figure out what. At 12:29 a.m., Tara clocked out of the men's club for the final time. In a bizarre move, Tara grabbed her leg, walked past the doorman without saying a word, and entered the car park. Employees confirmed the security guard walked Tara to her car, which was the last time she was ever seen. Tara drove off into the distance and disappeared into thin air. It wasn't until 5 a.m. that morning that anyone realized Tara was missing. Wayne told investigators that he had been at a pool hall until around 5 a.m. When he returned to their shared apartment, Tara was gone. He called the men's club but was informed Tara had left almost 5 hours ago. Wayne sprang into action and hit the roads of Houston to look for his girlfriend. 2 hours later at 7 a.m., Wayne discovered Tara's red 1986 Pontiac Fiero near the 1200 block of West Loop North in Houston. This route was one Tara often took to work. When Wayne arrived at the car, he noticed the doors were locked, the alarm was off, and the flashers were off. Inside, he saw a can of mace that Tara carried, and his heart sank. Minutes later, Wayne rushed to a phone and reported Tara missing to the Houston Police Department. Officers arrived at the scene and found no sign of a struggle. Naturally, their first person of interest was her boyfriend, Wayne. On the night of Tara's disappearance, Wayne claims he was at a local pool hall all evening, but conflicting witness reports contest this. One witness stated that Wayne had left the pool hall for around an hour and 45 minutes at around 12 a.m. to 12:30 a.m., arriving back at around 1:45 a.m. The pool hall was only 3 miles from the men's club and a few miles from where her car was discovered. Many have wondered whether Wayne had time to find his girlfriend, dump her body, and then her car before returning to the pool hall. When delving into her personal life, investigators also discovered another shocking clue. Tara had a secret admirer. Other girls at the men's club revealed to investigators that Tara had received large $100 tips and love notes from a man. One of the notes read, "Please don't be scared. Do what your heart tells you. I'm very excited that you'll marry me." Another read, "The more you hold out, the longer you jeopardize what I feel for you." Tara repeatedly rejected the man's advances, telling him that she was already in a relationship. According to Unsolved Mysteries, the secret admirer was interviewed by the Houston Police Department, who found nothing threatening within his notes. Wayne Hecker has long been considered a suspect in Tara's disappearance, but he maintains he had nothing to do with it. When questioned by detectives about his girlfriend's disappearance, he commented, quote, "I don't owe an explanation to anyone but the Lord." There are only 2 other suspects, the first being Tara's secret admirer, and the second being Robert Beatty. After she disappeared, Robert called Tara's family, pretending to be a police officer. He offered the family false information, saying Tara had been taken by a taxi driver. Robert himself was a taxi driver and was found in possession of handcuffs, police magazines, and various weapons. In 2015, one of the possible suspects, Wayne Hecker, passed away. Tara's parents and 2 of her siblings have also passed away, leaving a large hole in the Breckenridge family. As of 2023, Tara's case is cold. Tara Breckenridge is described as a white female with brown hair, brown eyes, 5'4" to 5'10", and 110 to 125 pounds. Her ears are pierced and she has scars on her upper lip, left arm, and left torso. She was last seen wearing a white or light t-shirt, blue shorts, sandals, and a 1991 Del Rio High School class ring. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Houston Police Department at 832-394-1872, quoting case number 084030392. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.